There are some who say it was a sudden change of heart that turned a would-be tyrant from his throne. Most accept the common story. A man pushed to his very limit by the machinations of a corrupt consul. A republic on the brink of becoming an empire, vulnerable to the ambitions of unscrupulous men. A desperate, unlawful action that saved the republic at the cost of one man's career and reputation. Although in one sense the legatus never returned to Rome, in another, greater sense, he never left. With his earth-shaking actions, he had set Rome upon a course that would guide it through history for centuries to come. It is said that he retired to a palatial estate in Egypt, overlooking the lush banks of the Nile. He had turned his back on the republic that he had saved, but he became instead a close and trusted advisor to Queen Cleopatra, under whose rule Egypt soon regained its independence and sovereignty from Rome. As his dominus left Rome in exile, old Syneros chose to stay behind. There was just enough time for the Servus to get the manumission he had been promised before he was left to his own devices. For a time, he stayed with Claudiana at her invitation, until he had earned enough denarii as a teacher of Greek to get a small place of his own. She had offered him money, but he had politely declined. Syneros still had many powerful and influential friends in the city, and thanks to them he enjoyed access to well-stocked libraries and well-educated conversation. Ultimately, what gave Syneros peace was the knowledge that he had long since unburdened himself with the guilt of the mistakes of his youth. In his final days, he was able to return to Greece at last, and died there, satisfied. When his friends left Rome, Caeso stayed behind in the city to settle down with Lucia and their daughter. Though their relationship was distant at first, the shared love they felt for their daughter soon brought them close, and eventually they had more children together. To his surprise, Caeso took well to the quiet life and to fatherhood. And on the few occasions when he did feel that old lust for adventure bubble back to the surface, he would leave Rome for a time and visit his friends in exile, who were always glad to see him. Even though it began in exile, Calida's second marriage turned out considerably better than her first. She followed her new husband to Egypt, where she valiantly fended off Cleopatra's advances on him. She did not take quickly to the opulent luxury of the royal palace, but eventually she did get used to it. Calida was happy to find that it was possible to be a wife and a mother without giving up the things she loved. She taught their children archery and horseback riding, and nobody ever again looked down on her for her unwomanly pursuits. Bestia returned to Africa to look for his sister again. Eventually he did find her, and together they returned to Mauritania, where they settled down in an idyllic village and started new families of their own. In this new, quiet life, Bestia learned the true value of happiness. Deianeira followed her friend into exile. Rome had never quite lived up to her expectations, and she was glad to leave it behind. Eventually, she returned to her homelands of Scythia, where she reconnected with her family, but she always remained in contact with her friends, visiting frequently with new stories and exotic spices from distant lands. Claudiana lived for many more years. She had many friends in Rome, and her life was peaceful and comfortable until her final days. On her deathbed, she revealed that she had once been very close indeed with Lucullus, and that indeed the true family name of her children was Licenia. Cato remained an important figure in Roman politics. Grudgingly respected even by those among the population who desired change, he remained a defender of the patrician class, a shield against the pandering and opportunism of more populist voices. He himself was elected consul twice throughout his life, and his years in the position were generally favorably regarded. Cicero served one more year as consul before his retirement. In his old days, he lived a quiet life on a farm in Sicily, where he was greatly beloved by the people for his time as quaestor. He continued to write many books on politics and law. Defeated once more by Rome, Mithridates escaped to the lands north of the Black Sea in the hope that he could raise a new army. but the locals soon rebelled against his rule. Incapable of taking his own life by poison, in the end, Mithridates died by the sword of his bodyguard. With Zenobia in charge of Musia, it became once more a peaceful part of the Roman province of Asia Minor. With her focus on trade and strong ties to the neighboring regions, her people enjoyed a period of great prosperity. Grateful for the mercy he had been shown, and no longer with Mithridates to tempt his greed, Damianos quickly resumed political leadership of Thracia. Here, the gladiator rebellion that had started in his school was threatening to spiral out of control. Thanks to Damianos, the gladiators were pacified quickly, and without inordinate bloodshed. Lunja's death sent Nazarmanes spiraling into a fractious conflict as greedy elders from minor tribes attempted to fill the void her passing had left behind. Though Queen Cleopatra attempted to bring the region under control, her attentions were too divided, the conflict too great for her to manage. Rome was forced to send more legions to enforce peace and stability with an iron fist. Though Africa Proconsularis eventually saw peace again, the traditions and culture of the Berber population were lost forever. Queen Cleopatra Philopator was, from the day of her coronation, a greatly beloved queen of Egypt. Revered and admired by the population, she spent many of her days traveling up and down the Nile to visit her subjects and address their troubles and concerns. Under her rule, Egypt remained a powerful and prosperous nation and a strong ally of Rome. The fruits of the Nile flowed freely to the people of the Republic. After traveling all across Africa for many years, going wherever her instincts took her, Raia eventually returned to Memphis and to the service of Tener at the Temple of Ubasti. When her mentor passed away, Raia naturally assumed the mantle as High Priestess of the Cat Goddess. Though the old faith was dwindling, she was greatly beloved by many, and her temple prospered, always home to many cats. With Divitiacus once more assuming rulership of the Aedui, the tribe maintained a strong alliance with Rome, and through it, they greatly prospered. With the aid of the Aedui, Gallia slowly unified under Roman rule, and civilization soon began to creep into those lands in the form of paved roads, aqueducts, and fortified Roman towns. In his old age, did the Druid ever regret hastening the absorption and suppression of his own faith and culture? We will never know. The once proud and strong Arverni were greatly reduced by the defeat of Vercingetorix, but his survival gave them hope. His will to make war upon Rome had been crushed, but he remained a strong figure of leadership among his people, even despite his failures. With his guidance, the tribes of Gallia remained unified and somewhat at peace, and vestiges of their culture and traditions survived their gradual subjugation under Rome. In this work, I have done my best to recount the history of this fascinating period, truthfully and accurately. As I have scoured the sources and spoken to many who claimed to have heard the story from someone who was there at the time, one thing that has stood out to me is the pivotal moments along the way where our story could have turned out very differently. Might the legatus and his friends have remained in Rome to influence its politics in the years to come? Certainly when Legio Victrix crossed the Rubicon, the only way to remain in Rome would have been as its emperor. But perhaps if a different decision had been made on that fateful bridge, a more peaceful resolution would have been possible. One should always take care when second-guessing historical figures with the benefit of hindsight. Here in the present, there will never truly be a way for you to know how you might have acted if you had lived in the past. Nor can you ever be certain how history will remember you.